Happy Friday and welcome to WatchGuard Security Week in Review, a video podcast dedicated to quickly summarizing the biggest information and network security stories each week and to sharing some practical security tips along the way. I'm your all-around security aficionado and nerd Corey Nachreiner, and this is the episode for the week starting April 13th, 2015. Let's jump right in and look at this week's Daily Security Bites. The topic today is China's Great Cannon. Researchers from Citizen Labs, which is part of the University of Toronto, released some detailed research last Friday talking about the tool that the Chinese government can allegedly use to launch distributed denial of service attacks or man-in-the-middle attacks. Now, you probably remember the massive distributed denial of service attack launched against GitHub a few weeks ago, which allegedly came from China. The GitHub DDoS was caused by a man-in-the-site attack. If you visited a particular Baidu analytics page, there's a chance your browser would get a malicious JavaScript injected, which would cause you to participate in the distributed denial of service attack. Well, this Citizen Labs post shares some details about the tool that these authors allege the Chinese government can use to force this sort of JavaScript injection. Now, I can't cover the whole thing in 1 minute. I highly recommend you read their detailed post if you're interested in technical details. But the research talks about how this Great Cannon is a different tool, although related to the Great Firewall of China. They talk about how it captures all the inline traffic coming in and out of China. And by doing so, if for instance they want to target traffic going to a particular Baidu web page, they can do that and instead send some other falsified, in this case injected JavaScript reply in return. The researchers compared this Great Cannon capability to NSA's own Quantum. It essentially allows these actors to man in the middle any traffic that enters or leaves China, and they can use it for this type of DDoS attack or even just to take over some victim's computer. So what's the takeaway here? Well, I believe this is just more proof of why we need to default to HTTPS for all web communications. Besides making sure our communications stay secret, it also confirms the integrity of our communication. That means if we're visiting one website, we can be sure that no one has injected any sort of malicious communication on the way there. The topic today is piles and piles of patches, because not only is it Microsoft Patch Tuesday, but Adobe, Oracle, and Chrome Patch Day as well. I gotta say, for these videos, Patch Day is one of my most boring topics as far as just pure interest or entertainment value. But that said, patching is one of the most practical security tips out there. According to statistics, anywhere from 70 to 90% of the attacks or vulnerabilities you encounter on the internet are patched. So simply patching your systems is one of the most important things you can do to keep yourself safe. With that in mind, let's dive into Patch Day, starting with Microsoft. Microsoft released 11 security bulletins and they rate 4 as critical. They fix vulnerabilities in Internet Explorer, Windows, the .NET Framework, Office, and Hyper-V. The most interesting update fixes a flaw in the Windows HTTP stack, which is what IIS and other web services use to handle HTTP requests. In a nutshell, if a bad guy sends a specially crafted packet to your web service, he can take over your machine. So if you're a Microsoft user, you might want to go get those updates, and you can read about them on our blog. On top of that, Adobe released security updates for Flash, Cold Fusion, and Flex. Almost everyone uses Adobe Flash, so be sure to go patch those as well if you use any of those products. It's Oracle's Critical Patch Update Day. They release critical patches for a ton of their software every quarter. So if you're an Oracle user, including Java, you might want to go check their security updates. And finally, Google has released a security update for Chrome. Hopefully you have Chrome set to automatically update, but if not, you might want to get that update as well. So that's this month's Patch Day. If you use any of those products, you want to go get those updates. And as boring as this topic may seem, remember, patching is one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself online. On Wednesday, we learned of a spy versus spy hack-off between 2 APT gangs. Kaspersky, one of WatchGuard's partners, released some interesting research about 2 big threat actors kind of going after each other. It begins with phishing emails from Nikon, which is a well-known cyber actor in the South China China Sea that goes after military and government and diplomat organizations in the Philippines and Malaysia and places like that, and was particularly active after that Malaysian airline disappeared a year ago. Anyways, they sent out a bunch of targeted phishing emails, and one of the organizations they sent it to, who Kaspersky calls HealthSing, actually recognized the phishing email as an attack, and they replied back. Rather than opening this malicious document in the email, they actually tried to pretend to verify that the sender was really who they said they were. And during that time period, they also got more clues showing that Nikon really was a threat actor. So in response to this, HealthSing sent their own return email containing a password protected archive file, which in itself had its own Trojan. So this is a case of one attacker attacking another attacker. And Kaspersky calls this an APT versus APT gang and describe it as a first of its kind. Now personally, I don't necessarily know if these are really APT gangs, and this is not the first of its kind. If you followed botnets for years, bot herders and criminal actors, whether they be big criminal actors or just script kiddies, have often gotten these sorts of cyber fights. For instance, a lot of bot herders often try to take over the command and control center of other bot herders in order to get their victims. Now, Kaspersky seems to be applying that these are advanced actors and perhaps nation states, although they don't really attribute this to anyone. Anyways, who cares if this is APT actors or just normal criminals? What you probably care about is what we can learn from this. And really, this was phishing 101. This was not an advanced threat, in my opinion. So really, normal email handling practices apply. Don't interact with unsolicited attachments, even if they're just documents, because documents can be malicious. Be very careful with links in emails. Don't open password-protected archives. That's often a sign. And in the worst case, if you think something is legitimate, you might still want to verify it with the sender, because that communication might tip you off that something funny is going on. Finally, keep your system patched and up to date, because often these have to take advantage of vulnerabilities in your system in order to work. So if you just use email common sense, this sort of attack shouldn't affect you. And personally, I don't believe in attacking your attacker. Defense is your best option. On Thursday, Sony Pictures made the headlines again due to its infamous network breach last year. This is because Wikileaks chose to create a searchable database of all these stolen documents from the Sony Pictures breach, including hundreds of thousands of emails and tens of thousands of other documents. According to Julian Assange, this is because he feels that Sony Pictures is a huge multinational corporation and we deserve to see what they're doing, especially because this is a geopolitical situation. I gotta tell you, I cannot disagree more. This is sharing stolen documents. I don't really think there's any good reason to share documents that were stolen from a private company. You know, I've actually believed in some whistleblower cases before. In some cases, when there is a big power that's doing something fraudulent, that's taking advantage of its power to do something that's incorrect, I could see the argument for why you would want to free information that should be confidential. But in this particular case, Wikileaks is just publicizing stolen data, presumably to get more hits to their website. I really absolutely don't see the point of spreading this sort of dirt from a private company. It makes no sense to me. Now, there's no real practical security tip there, but it's just more proof of why you need to make sure to take some safeguards in protecting your own data. Make sure to use encryption and use all the layers of defense you can to make sure that your important data does not leak to the public. By the way, Sony Pictures was also in the headlines because on Sunday there was a 60 Minutes report where some of the Mandiant researchers released some more details about the Sony breach. They did confirm that the malware used in the breach was very similar to malware seen in other attacks, and they also talked about how it was wiper malware. They said that after stealing all this data, Sony's attackers did actually disable over 3,000 computers and 800 servers. So you do need to be concerned about more destructive wiper malware that some threat actors are using in the public. Anyways, I know there's no practical security tip to today's news, but this Sony Pictures Wikileaks news is really the top headline today. And if anything, it should really reinforce the fact that you should take care in protecting your most confidential documents. Encryption, encryption, encryption. Today I'm talking about disastrous dating site design. And if you don't like alliteration, you should probably forget I just said that. Anyways, are you single? Do you date online, especially at Match.com? If so, you're going to want to know about this story. An Ars Technica reporter got a tip from one of his Twitter followers telling him to check out the Match.com login pages. By running a packet sniffer, he figured out that the login page did not use HTTPS, or secure web communication. This means that your Match.com username and password are transmitted over the network in clear text. Frankly, I find it flabbergasting in this day and age that anyone would make the mistake of having a non-HTTPS login page, but Match.com, which has over 21 million users, apparently made this mistake. So if you are a Match.com user, what this means to you is you really need to avoid logging into the site in public places. If you're at a local coffee shop or some sort of public Wi-Fi access point, there's a chance that someone just sniffing that connection can get your login credentials. Now, it's not the end of the world. I'm sure they're going to fix it, but it is kind of surprising that a website wouldn't use HTTPS, especially now that we're seeing more and more websites use HTTPS as a default. In fact, another news story from this week is Netflix, which probably has a huge chunk of internet traffic, has decided to make their streaming service HTTPS only. This does have impact because there is a cost, at least in overhead and resource, for HTTPS, yet Netflix believes strongly enough in security that they're going to do it. I think in the next year or so, everything will be HTTPS, which is a good thing for security. The takeaway here is to make sure your network is ready for HTTPS. Make sure you have networking gear that can support all your web communications being encrypted. And most importantly, make sure you have security gear that can actually secure HTTPS streams. Bad guys are using it too. Anyways, if you're a Match.com user, be careful where you log in. That's all for this week, folks. I hope you found it informative. As always, if you haven't subscribed to our blog, you can find it at blog.watchguard.com or at watchguard-security-center.com. It's where I post this video, and that post has a great reference section with all kinds of other interesting security stories. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at SecAdept, or you can follow WatchGuard at WatchGuardTech. Finally, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want these videos more quickly. Finally, a real quick show note. For the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be going to some security and IT technology shows, the RSA Security Conference and Interop. I intend to try to post videos as regularly as I can, but I may not be able to post videos every single day or even my weekly video. So just be aware that videos won't be as regular over the next few weeks. With that said, thank you for watching, and here at WatchGuard, we're rooting for you.